Good evening, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of Set Apart, where we have a holy God trying to be a holy people. How do I live more like Christ each and every day? So we covered justification. That's the start point. Am I right with God? Then we did a kind of an explanation of living right before God and what that means, and living right before the world, coram Deo, coram mundo. Then we said, what does our personal life look like to be more like Christ? And we used this idea of faith, hope, and love. Well, this week we're going to talk about our relationships. How do I live redeemed in my relationships? What does it look like? How do I be in the world and not of the world? So let's look at 1 Corinthians 13, 14. It says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? Now, we have to understand something about this verse. I wanted to kind of start in the negative and kind of work our way up to more positive. When it talks about being unequally yoked, a lot of people use this for marriage, and they should. That is a very true application of this verse. If I am a believer, I am not to be equally yoked with an unbeliever, right? That is a command. We see that here. But when I look at my friendships, here's the idea of a yoke, right? Unequally yoked means that he has more influence or pull on me than I have on him. So the way it would work is you had two oxen walking. And an even yoke means they shared the burden equally. And sharing the burden means they would walk in tandem. They would go the same direction, the same way. To be unequally yoked means one ox is pulling much more than the other. So it's not that I, as the Christian, am stronger and am trying to pull the ox with me. The portrait here is I am the Christian and the unbeliever is guiding this relationship. And I'm allowing them to guide me in it. So that may lead to me doing things I don't want to do or shouldn't be doing. It says, what has righteousness and lawlessness have with each other? In other words, I can be friends with lost people. Jesus was friends with lost people. That was the whole point of our Meals with Jesus series, is he didn't just embrace them, he accepted them. But he never left them where he found them. There was repentance and forgiveness and a life change. And if you were a Pharisee, you had a really long dinner with him, right? He let them have it. But it says, what fellowship has light with darkness? So this isn't saying I can't have friends who are lost. When I'm looking to redeem with Christ, that means my friendships are no longer random or just there because they're there. I'm not just a friend with somebody just to be them anymore. I have to have purpose and mission, or they will drag me away. Right? Here's what 1 Corinthians 15, 32 through 34 says. What do I gain if, humanly speaking, I fought with the beast at Ephesus? If the dead are not raised, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. So wake up from your drunken stupor, as is right, and do not go on sinning. For some have no knowledge of God, and I say this to your shame. So he says, look, I don't care what you've done. I don't care if you even fought in the gladiator battles against some lions. If the dead are not raised, let us, and he says, then we should all just die. Right? Just give up. Live a hedonistic life. Eat, drink, be merry. But he says, bad company ruins good morals. So he's saying in this verse, right, he ends it with, for some have no knowledge of God. That if people's interaction with me ends with us just having a good old time, sinning and drinking and partying and lusting, and my relationships with worldly people drag me away, the rest of my accomplishments don't matter. He says, bad company will corrupt your good morals. So in other words, you may have fought a beast in Ephesus, but you won't fight that friend who you smoke pot with. You may have fought that beast in Ephesus, but you and that friend who have lewd conversations, you won't stop. And he says, for some have no knowledge of God, and I say this to your shame. That those people who you are carousing with don't know God at all, and yet you do. And it should not be so. I'm not saying you have to be the Amway evangelist. Hello, my name is so-and-so. Would you like to accept Jesus today? What I am saying is that Christ should be a part of everything you do, that He is living from the inside out in your life, and it's affecting your relationships. That lost people are now ministries, and they can be authentic friendships. I think we are amiss to say they're just a mission, and if they don't accept Christ, I'm done with them. I don't think that's what the Scripture's teaching us. I think what the Scripture's teaching us is, if there's somebody I sin with, and every time I'm with them I'm sinning, I'm not doing the will of God. I'm not having a healthy, redeemed relationship. Now, if I go with them and they go to the bar and they drink, and I drink the club soda and I drive them home, and I'm not tempted to sin, but I'm ministering to them and I'm telling them about Christ, and I'm truly not being tempted, I'm okay. But that's a very subjective thing. You can't say, oh yeah, I smoke pot with those guys to go reach them. Well, it's not the way that works. We just make lewd jokes just so I can reach that guy. Sin does not win sin. I think we have this crazy idea that I have to look just like somebody to reach them. That's not at all how I think it works. I remember hearing a story of a pastor who is from, he's from down south, never really been in any kind of inner city, and he moved to Atlanta. And in Atlanta, there was a particular gang that was right across the street, and there was all kinds of issues, graffiti, tagging, all kinds of stuff. Well, the son of that gang leader had died. The pastor said, I got to do something. Now, obviously, this was an African-American gang. It was in the hood. It was in a tough part, and this dude had no cultural idea what to do. So he and his wife made something. He said, sweetheart, I want you to get folks to pray. I'm going to go take it to him. I said, okay, I'm going to take it to him. So he goes across the street, knocks on the door, and he's given a hard time. But he says, I'm here to see so-and-so. I want to wish him his condolences. This is from the church. We just want you to know Jesus loves you. So let him go up. And you can only imagine what's going on inside this home. And literally goes up 3 flights of stairs. And there's this guy surrounded by women and guns and drugs. And, just that full picture. Scary guy. Scarred up. The pastor says, I'm so sorry. Sorry about your son. We're praying for you. Here's the gift. If you ever need anything, we're right here. The guy just shook his head at him. And he said, you should probably get out of here. Pastor got out of there as quick as he possibly could. He went back and they just prayed. Well, the next day, all the graffiti on the church was gone. It was gone. And over the next couple of weeks, there's no more disturbances, no more break-ins. And then that gentleman who was running a gang walked across the street by himself. Said, I want to see the pastor. The pastor saw him. He said, hey, you don't know me from anyone. Why did you care? He goes, we mess with you all the time. And he said, because I have a God who loves me. And he loves you. And he died for you. So he has this relationship with probably the worst guy you could think of. And they become friends. Now, the gang leader does not become a Christian at this point. But nobody messed with that church. And he said, look, y'all can freely go. No one wants to mess with them. You and your people, you don't have to worry about a thing in that. So they were protected. And eventually that man ended up becoming a Christian. And he ended up starting his own ministry one day. That's what a missional friendship looks like. You can be around rough people and you even call them friends. You eat with them, you spend time with them, but you're there with Christ. So moving on from that topic, how then do we work with those who are struggling? Maybe we're around folks who are struggling with their sin. Galatians 6, 1-2. Brothers, if anyone is caught in transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. And keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens so as to fulfill the law of Christ. So maybe you have around somebody in church who, okay, maybe they're not the best example. Maybe they're struggling. It's not my job to condemn them. It is, if they're caught in transgression, is to restore them gently. Now think about that. If that brother or sister you catch is your spouse, your child, your teacher, your pastor. It says, you who are spiritual, the spiritual one, the one most like Christ, restores them in a spirit of gentleness. So in other words, we say, how do we restore this first, as opposed to how do we destroy it? How do we restore instead of condemn? Then it says, keep watch on yourself, lest you be tempted. Because then what he says is this. He goes, look, if you're not going to be gentle, if you fall, no one's going to be gentle with you. What you give out, you better be able to take. And I think that's one of the things that's really important when it comes to living like Christ. There's a lot of things that Jesus was accused of, eating with drunkards and sinners and prostitutes and all those things. But they could only accuse him of sin by proxy, by sin by association. You never see the Pharisees dare to accuse Jesus of doing a blatant sin. They'll say he's a heretic, he disagrees, and his disagreement should warrant him death, but they would never accuse him publicly until his trial of sin. His character rose above it. And so he says, look, if you want to be restored with gentleness, you need to deal gentleness. Haven't you ever had that happen in your life? Right? Maybe it's a boss, right? And they're just awful, right? They're mean, they're crass, they're hard to work with. We have a coworker that's hard to work with. And everyone's like waiting with a microscope for the most minor infraction to get them in trouble, right? Because they're harsh, they're tough to be around. You want to just get them out, get them in trouble. But then you might have that coworker who's always kind, who maybe does a little extra to help. Who's encouraging, who's not downplaying your role in the team, and they mess up. 9 times out of 10, people will give that person grace. What you show is what you'll receive. And to be like Christ means we give more grace, and we do it gently. We don't start with the spiritual 2x4. We start with the spiritual arm around the shoulder. Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only that which is good for the building up as it fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. If I want to relationally be sanctified, I got to watch what my mouth says. I have to watch what my mouth says. In other words, when it fits the occasion, I don't corrupt people with what I say. I don't tear them down. That shouldn't be my goal. My goal should be to build them up and to make give grace to those who hear. In other words, when you see somebody just ripping you and they see you respond back with kindness, with grace, people go, wow, there's something different. I want to share a story, and it's a more recent one. It's kind of close, and so I'm going to leave it fairly vague. But there's a gentleman who I've gotten to serve with who, I was so inspired by his work. Put in a ton of work. Worked his tail off trying to reach people for the kingdom of God. But his church didn't really grow numerically. 2 years really struggled. And he knew time was going to come for us to pull the plug on funding for the church. And no one really wanted to do it because his character was incredible, it was impeccable. Knocked on thousands of doors, hundreds of them opened. 15 people accept Christ over the course of 2 years. Literally thousands. We kept a journal and a catalog and prayed for these people. And when it came time for us to say, hey, look, it's just not working, he knew. And he had such poise, such grace, such humility. He received everything. He, of course, was sad. But he said, if I was in your shoes, I'd do the same. So all of us were willing to do, what can we do to help you? We can't fund this ministry anymore, but what else can we do? I couldn't help but be inspired, even in just how he took. He goes, look, it's not a failure. I was faithful to God. That's what this looks like, is we can build each other up, even if we need to do some hard things. James 1:19-20. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Let everyone be quick to hear. When somebody is talking to us, the best thing we can do is just hear them out. Just listen. Just listen. You don't need to share your story. You don't need to say, oh, this is where I identify. You can ask. And I try my best to ask, may I share a story to kind of relate to that? But we gotta let people finish. We gotta hear them out. Be slow to speak. Be slow to anger. Sometimes our anger jumps the gun. We get angry before we even know what's really going on. And sometimes we let our temper completely destroy our relationships. Jesus had a very metered temper. That meant it was allowed to come out when it was time. Otherwise, he just kept it away and just listened. Let me listen. Because it says the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. I was trying to spend more time at the Y and at the game store with Brother Brandon. We're sitting there and we had a lady come in. And she talks about her political views, and we'll just say ours differed. And she drops this little gem a couple minutes before she leaves. She goes, I would much rather take my kids to a drag show than to church, because they're not going to get abused there like you do by priests. Now, here I am, a pastor, sitting there, and a little bit of everything's rising up. I just nodded and said, it's terrible that happens. I want to say a whole lot more. A lot more. 1, wasn't my establishment. 2, it's not my place. 3, what was I going to do? She obviously has very strong opinions about the church. And me getting angry because she pushed one of my buttons is not going to help. It's not going to help. There are moments where you just have to sit there and take it. And smile and say, that is terrible. And we can agree. That is terrible. But you hear some of those statements and it's jarring. When I live for Christ, it's not about me. It's about Him. So I care about how I get corrupted by those around me. And if I'm not corrupted, they view it as ministry. That ministry becomes authentic love and friendship. And I use my words to build them up. And even when I get angry, I slow down and remember God's given me this relationship for a reason. Whatever the reason is. You may find them the most annoying person on the planet. It doesn't mean God didn't put them in your life. We're not to spurn those relationships. So if I want to live more like Jesus, there's a lot more grace. There's a lot more wisdom. Can't give sin a pass. And I need to be accepting without being affirming. I need to build them up in and towards Christ. Thank you for joining us again this week. If you have any questions, you can email us at staff@newday416.church. If you when you want any information, you can go to newday416.church for our website. We love you all. And may God richly bless you. We'll see you on Sunday.